It's Ryan Dement from Chasing Financial Freedom podcast. Hope you guys are having a great day. Today on the podcast, we have Scott Anderson, serial entrepreneur, executive coach, and licensed mental health therapist. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here.
Thanks for coming in. I know it's a little bit of a wait, but we'll get things started off right. So before we get into who you are and what you're doing, everyone knows I got a dog, Moose. He's in the back, barking. So we'll do some edits, but be patient with us. So Scott, tell us a little bit about who you are.
As you said, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've launched 10 companies and sold 8 of them. And selling 8 of them is the best part. It's sort of like they say about your second best day is buying a boat, and your first best day is selling the boat. And I find it's like that with businesses too. And I've been an executive coach mainly for entrepreneurs with small to medium-sized businesses. So like 2 to 20 million is sort of my sweet spot in sales. I'm also a licensed mental health therapist. I started a not-for-profit for military families recovering from PTSD about 15 years ago. And as part of that, I went back to graduate school.
That's great. So I've got to ask the question. You started 8 businesses and sold all of them. Why start all of them and then sell them? Are you just not in love with them, or is there some other thing?
Yeah, to be fair, 2 of them cratered, so selling them is probably
Fair
a
enough.
flattering me. I just what I find about me as an entrepreneur, not everybody, but we tend to be very strong starters and not so great finishers, and just as a group. And uh, I know that about myself, and a lot of the folks that I coach have the same sort of temperament, where they're just intensely white hot interested in something for a while, but the interest has a beginning, middle, and an end. And in fact, the worst mistake that I made in the business that I owned the longest was staying with it as long as I did. I should have left it to my partners, who are infinitely better at running it than I was, 5 years before I left the business. And in fact, thinking back on mistakes that I made, staying too long was one of the worst ones in that particular business. Um, so I've just come to kind of accept that in myself, I guess.
So what mistakes are you referring to other than staying too long? What would be some of those that you made along the way? Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners that
Sure.
listen to the show.
Well, I mean, there are so many. This is why we say Swedish people have flat foreheads. From smacking myself in the forehead, but I mean, I've made so many mistakes. The main mistake I think that I see over and over, that I've made over and over, and that my clients tend to make, is that we kind of tend to do things over and over, expecting different results. The definition of insanity. So we'll get a business that with our entrepreneurial grit and will, we get to start, we get it off the ground, and it gets to 2 or 3 years, and then it begins to plateau in some way or another. And what was a great business is now only an okay business, because the trajectory is leveled off. We can't get sales and profit to move. And so what most of us do, and I did over and over, is to work harder and harder and harder, and do mainly the same things again and again and again and again, expecting different results. And sales and profits would continue to be plateaued. And I would work, 50 hours, then 60 hours, then 70 hours, then 80 hours, and work myself into burnout. And that's one of the things that can kind of make you want to get out of a business, is working yourself into a hole, not realizing that I was the problem. And in fact, in all of the mistakes I've made in business, and all the business problems I've had, 99% have been of my own making. But this is a classic one where, the real answer was I needed to start working about 20 hours a week, but I needed to start doing things that would have an impact. Um, so I couldn't delegate. I was micromanaging. I couldn't recruit and keep a team. I wasn't really good at systems and process, though I desperately needed it. And so I would make up for that or compensate for that by trying to do everything, um, and not delegating anything, not really delegating anything. And the business continued to, I've had this happen a couple of times. You'd think I'd learn, but that's, and that creates a whole other chain of problems, because then you begin to look at your team and think, my God, I just can't hire good people. I hear that all the time. There's just, with unemployment as low as it is, even though we're in a recession, I can't hire good people because, and the truth is that people like me, entrepreneurs like me, even if I don't intend to, I drive them away by not being able to delegate, really genuinely delegate, by continuing to micromanage, by continuing to hover, by having unrealistic expectations, by being unwilling to train people, really. uh, so then I wonder why I can't keep people. And so there's a revolving door of talented people, and I'm still hammering my head against this plateau, this glass ceiling.
Where do you think we get that from? Because that is a struggle that I spent before coming into our businesses. I've had two failed businesses before this. I attributed a lot of my failures was through corporate America. Corporate America never taught me how to be a great leader. Taught me how to be a manager, never a great
Right.
leader. And I think that's missing in the corporate world. And maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I'm just talking for myself. But I mean, we have these habits we pick up. We all pick them up somewhere. What's a common theme for us entrepreneurs, small business owners?
Well, yeah, I think a lot of it is that you're exactly right about the idea of, being great doers, but not great managers. And I don't know if anybody, we created actually in our practice, in our Double Dare coaching practice, we developed specifically a leadership development process for small business doers that need to become leaders. First, the CEO founder, but ultimately their teams. And some people are kind of naturally born with some skills, but most of us are not. And our skills as doers are the things that get us promoted to be leaders. But the difference between doership and leadership is, it's a pretty big gulf. And so I think you're exactly right. There are some principles about leadership that come naturally to some people, but for most people, unfortunately, being a great salesperson or a great service person doesn't mean you are necessarily a great leader of sales or service people. So that's a skill that most of us, I think, have to learn. And in most entrepreneurs' cases, we learn it through a series of failures and find out what didn't work. To a big degree, I think to your earlier question about why entrepreneurs tend to hit this predictable ceiling is because, our superpower, our ability to kind of make something happen out of thin air, um, is a great skill, and the ability to get a business to 1 million or 2 million or 3 million in sales, mainly by dint exclusively of our own willpower. That's a superpower, but it's also kryptonite, as I like to say. And sooner or later, that the very skill that got us to 2 or 3 or 5 million dollars in sales will be the exact thing that prevents us from scaling the business and turning it into something that's really livable and can break through those plateaus.
There's a book out there, and I'm sure you've heard of it, called Profit First, and I've read it several times. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, yeah. Mike Michalowicz is fantastic. I practice a lot of those. He saved me from myself a lot of times.
I actually just finished reading it for the third time because I'm embarking on something you've got in place already, a nonprofit, and I want
Yes.
to run my nonprofit in our real estate space like a for
Nice.
profit. And in the end of the world, geez, boy, more coffee. At the end of the day, at the end of the day, when we come to our end of our fiscal year, if we have monies left over and there's profit there, I want to use that to either help someone go through some financial coaching literacy. Maybe we have enough money to where we could build a house for a home for a family in need and show them how that works. There's just so many
Fantastic.
other things to do through the nonprofit. But I'm in a space where a lot of nonprofits work. I'm in the affordable housing space, and you should see how they run their businesses upside down. All they do
Yeah,
is just get grants and dollars, and they don't care how far they run it into the ground, and they wonder why they can't help more people. It's crazy.
really true. In starting I had been on the boards and board chairs of several not-for-profit organizations before starting my own 501c3 to help military families with PTSD, and really learned a lot about what the people who give money to not-for-profits, what they're looking at, and uh, and most of them come from business. Let's face it, they made a lot of money somewhere, and in a lot of cases, that's true. So, yeah, we tried to run our non-for-profit in the flattest way we possibly could, with as little overhead as was humanly possible, because that's the thing that grantors hate and should hate is overhead. You're paying for the transformation, you're paying for the change in people's lives. But when you see a lot of officers' salaries and rent and various overhead charges, as a grantor, as a donor, I just, I hate that. And so I think you're exactly right. And Profit First is such a great book. I've read it a lot of times myself, and all entrepreneurs should read that book.
I love his saying in there, and I'm probably going to get it wrong. I think he calls it entrepreneurial starvation or something to that extent, where he wants to eliminate that altogether.
Yeah,
Um, I- the first two times I read it, I didn't, most of it didn't even stick. So I'm like, oh my God, this is so backwards from what we're taught. And now the third time into it, it's like, oh wow, this all sticks. There's so many things I can do, and how much more impact can I make if I truly put that profit first and take care of myself, and then make sure that the business, I mean, not running the business, off of a small budget, but also at the same time is a lot of businesses have some fat in their OpEx. Why can't you get rid of
absolutely.
most of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I discovered Profit First and Mike Michalowicz's other books, but that one in particular, um, just after I had had one of those years that a lot of entrepreneurs have, where you're ideally saving money to pay taxes, but if you don't pay taxes until the end of the year, you sometimes get that dreaded phone call from the accountant that says, "Good news and bad news. Good news is, boy, you had a great year, much better than we planned. Bad news is you owe the IRS $100,000 tomorrow. I hope you have that in the checking account, because you need to run a check over for $100,000." And that happened once to me, and I didn't have $100,000. And fortunately, I discovered Profit First shortly thereafter, and I've never had a problem like that again. But you know, uh, again, we learn so much by our failures. But that's one thing that Mike Michalowicz could, or Profit First, can completely eliminate, and also makes you focus on OpEx. Absolutely,
Because in the space that we're in, the real estate space, I mean, it's kind of backwards to most service businesses, because we're going to spend a lot of money up front to build a house and then make money on the back end. Well, that back end is not all profit. And
right?
until I saw that, let's say we had $50,000 profit on or $50,000 gross on that house, still got to pay taxes, still got to
Yeah,
pay owner distributions. There's still payroll. There's all this an OpEx in there. And when you start breaking that down, it's like, man, I was missing a lot of that. And that's slowly but surely we've done that over the last several years to get that together. And then now I'm going to try to really implement it into that nonprofit. But the question is, and I want to get into your coaching and what you're doing, because it sounds like you're doing some pretty interesting stuff. How do you take a business that's struggling in all those aspects and help that entrepreneur kind of get back on, track, and find their
right.
passion and their purpose for why they started the business?
Exactly. Well, and this is the thing, it seems so counterintuitive. In fact, to the point where a lot of entrepreneurs will just sort of shake their heads and say that can't be possible. But the short version is that the way to make more is to work less, and or to break is definitely to break through a plateau. But if you're running your business by mainly working harder or worrying more or both, we're never going to break through to a life worth living that way. And so the biggest switch is to help entrepreneurs see that 80% of what they do is not what they set out to do in the beginning, was not really the genius of their business, not the magic that made their business start, but that after 2 or 3 years, the 80% of what they do is really doing the work that they can't delegate or haven't been able to systematize or turn into a process. And so mainly what we want to do is to create a schedule that's completely flip-flopped, where instead of doing 10% maybe of the things that only they can do that are really magical and that their customers love and their market loves, that really are transformational, we want to flip flop their schedule so 80% of what they do in a day is in that genius zone, and 20% or less, ideally more like 10%, has to do with tasks that others generally can do better, faster, and cheaper. And this is so counterintuitive that it takes a desperate entrepreneur to begin to even look at it. It's very similar with profit first. Until you're in a lot of pain, you don't necessarily look at this. But if after you realize after a while that boy, I my sales have not moved, my profit has not moved, but my life has moved. Now my children are needing to go to college one day, or we're wanting to have a vacation one of these days, or we want to retire one of these days, but our business is not growing along with our lifestyle. What am I going to do? So that the biggest switch is to really identify what are the things that as the entrepreneur only you can do, that really move the needle. And almost always that involves re-emphasis on strategy and sales. Not always, but in most cases, the magic that the entrepreneur brings is in those areas. But they're at a point in their lives where they're spending 10 hours a week doing that and 60 hours a week doing tasks that others could do better, faster, and cheaper.
And I lived that life in all three of my businesses. First two failed, and now this one. When I first started, is I was doing, and this is not a bad knock, but I was doing $7 an hour work. I was posting
Exactly.
social media stuff. I was doing blog posting. I was doing stuff to get our name out there. And it's like I had to reinvent myself to learn all that stuff when I could have found somebody else to help me. And I would probably say 2.5, 3 years into this current business, I finally realized that a strong VA that has the skill sets that I was looking for, even if it took me weeks, if months to find the right person, was worth it.
Yeah.
And now I'm working on a second VA because my first VA is very good at video, and I'm looking for somebody now who can do social and really take us up another notch. And
Absolutely.
I don't want to do that. I want to work on the business, not in the business. And there's people out there that have better skills than I do. I know that, and I'm not
Exactly.
offended.
No, absolutely. I mean, when I'm honest with myself and most of my entrepreneurial clients, there's really two or three things that they do that nobody else can do, but which also accounts for the trajectory of the business and the fact that it's survived and thrived for, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. But there's only two or three things, really. It isn't 20 things, it isn't even 10. Usually it's, I don't know, between two and five things that the founder does that are truly important and really do move the needle. But if we only spend 10% of our day doing those magical things, we're never going to make any progress. So, it's one of the things I found is a lot of people realize, okay, I have to hire a team, and more people are hiring virtual assistants or executive assistants or what have you, which can be great leverage. But what I've heard a lot of my clients say is, yeah, but I keep firing people that fail, or I can't find. They say I can't find people that really work, and one of the things that we take our clients through, we have a program called CEO Freedom. One of the things that we take our clients through is a process that will help actually give them technology so they can predict with 90% accuracy how folks are really going to show up at the job. Because most of us have such strong interview bias, we tend to hire people we like or people who are like us. And those people tend to wipe out because people like us aren't good at the details you just described. So, but that's the main thing because a lot of people know, yeah, I've got to get a VA, I've got to get a team, I've got to introduce systems or processes, but they've tried and failed a lot of times, and mainly it's because they don't have a technique or a model to follow in order to hire the right people for the right job and then to manage them in a way that's that will retain them and actually make them love to come to work every day.
It's an SOP, really, standard operating procedure. If you don't have it in place, how are you supposed to bring somebody in to do that role to support you, one, but two, to excel at the role and then want to stay?
Exactly.
And I've failed at that many times along this path, this journey.
And also to
It's
create KPIs or other
yes,
quantitative measures so that you know, and more importantly, in a way, your partner knows, your team member knows whether they're actually fulfilling the requirements of the job in a measurable, indisputable, quantifiable way. Unfortunately, as entrepreneurs, we have this sort of gut instinct sometimes that they're not measuring up or they don't do it like we would do it. And we lose confidence in them and our employees feel that. But if we can instead really measure, are they doing what we hired them to do? Then, it really does take away a lot of those management mistakes.
it's amazing because you talked about something that I've focused on a lot and I've struggled with was hiring people that are different than you with different skill sets.
Exactly.
It's a tough struggle out there. But the second person I hired was opposite of me and total introvert, not an operator, really was about the numbers, but also had a different type of background when it came to housing. It's amazing. Just a whole
Yes.
different mindset of how he sees the business, the world, and how he approaches our projects. He's like my yin to my yang, yin to yang type of thing. But the thing I
Exactly.
I I talk about is if you surround you've said this, you surround yourself with people that are like you, you're just going to get the same results over and over again. Definition of insanity. But if you start adding, just dropping some of those different people into your space, watch your business grow. And we truly have seen that happen. But I'm backing up to this long question is why are we so afraid to bring in individuals that are different than us in our
You
businesses?
know, I think that part of it is that we don't have the tools. Most entrepreneurs don't have the tools, which is why in our CEO Freedom program, one of the things that we bring to the party is performance projection technology. In our case, we use predictive index. But what it tells you is, first of all, it helps you create a model that so that you can identify first of all the things that you're best at but also most importantly the places where you're weak and the places where you really need the help, and we can create a online model for what that yang looks like that's different than you. Then we can create a job description out of that, but more importantly we can create an online assessment that the individual can take so that we know with 90% accuracy whether they can actually show up and be that person. And this is the problem with interviewing, is that most entrepreneurs are not great interviewers. In fact, most people aren't great interviewers. So one of the things predictive index helps us do is to discern with 90% accuracy and using a really great technology, to tell us, will these people actually show up on the job and perform the way we need them to or not, notwithstanding how they interview or even what their resume says. So mainly, I found it's that entrepreneurs know in their hearts that they just aren't great interviewers and they've had failure after failure. So we try to give them tools that will give them confidence to make decisions with greater accuracy and projectability.
Without giving away your secret sauce, whatever, I mean, what's predictive index? I mean, it sounds very exotic and very cool, so I have to ask a little
Oh,
bit.
sure, sure. Well, check out predictiveindex.com.
Okay.
It's a technology that we've used for a long time, and there are a number of performance projection uh, instruments that are available today. The reason that we use predictive index is that it's been in business for, geez, almost 60 years, I think, or no, yeah, about 60 years. And the reason that's important is because they have analyzed more um, potential hires and then done the back end correlative studies to see how they actually did perform when they actually did get in the job. And that's the key. The correlative studies are what gives predictive index the statistical projectability that it has. And that's the key to it. There are a number of online instruments that are available today. But what's important is that in predictive index case, it's the most statistically projectable one there is. In fact, they have done north of 50 million assessments. They've evaluated 50 million potential employees and done over 500 correlative studies in the back end, which makes it so much more projectable. And it also means it's EOC compliant. So the Labor Department will allow you to use tools like this because they're so accurate to hire and fire people. But this takes the guesswork out of it. And I think that's the main thing I found as an entrepreneur was I knew my gut instinct was terrible. I could see it in the bet and in the wrong hire over and over again. But I didn't see any way to get out of it.
So predictive index, I mean, I'm guessing it sounds like something that's like the DISC method. It's just on steroids, so it's a little bit more in depth.
It's yeah, it's in some way DISC probably is a sort of a grandchild of predictive index. DISC is not EEOC compliant. It's very good, but it's not EEOC compliant because they don't have enough back end projection or projectability in correlative studies. So DISC is great, but I prefer predictive index because it is the most accurate instrument on the market. And and as a result, our clients can hire with great confidence. Predictive index assessments also give you coaching and management, sort of like scouting reports that tell you here's how you need to coach. Like you mentioned, the VA you hired that's sort of introverted and different from you. Managing that person is way different than managing somebody like you or me, where we can talk about it and yuck it up and pat each other on the back. That's not going to work with an introvert. And so one of the things PI gives you, and our clients get as a result is this is a management guide basically that tells you step by step, here's how to coach and lead these people because they're different than you are. And the things that would be meaningful to you aren't going to be meaningful to them. And that's the key. If the whole problem right now is how do we, first of all, identify great talent and recruit them, but more importantly, how do we retain them? So many of my clients complain of a revolving door where they train people up, they polish up their resume, and then they're gone. So the key really is not just identifying these rock star people that are different than we are, but then to keep them over time where they can become more and more and more valuable. And that's where most of us fall down.
Oh God, we fall down so many times on that. But I've got an kind of off the beaten path question. Can you use predictive index to potentially use it to like a contractor? When I say a contractor, is it only,
Absolutely.
is it
No,
meant only?
no,
eh,
no, any kind of relationship, any kind of business relationship, it can help you it can help you kind of choose an attorney or an accountant. They'll be a little surprised.
No. Are you
Oh,
really?
absolutely, absolutely.
Wow.
They may not be willing to do it, but it really helps. It really helps with communication. I mean, for example, most entrepreneurs are good with big ideas and
Yeah.
big concepts, but we have trouble landing the plane. So most of us do need people who are SOP oriented, detail oriented, etc. If that's what you need in an accountant, an attorney, and then or any other contractor online that you would find online at Fiverr, let's say, it's a great way to find out what's going on with those people, how to work with them, not necessarily manage them as an employer, but how to be a good partner with them. The other thing that this tool does that's really important is if you've had enough people do a PI, one of the things is that we can identify people who you've hired and have failed who have taken a PI, and we know what that template is or what that model is, and we can be sure not to hire someone who has that profile. By contrast, we can identify your rock stars and in a given role, let's say editing. And once we know what their PI profile is, then we can try to hire against that profile and find. And so it allows us to kind of clone, not really, but kind of clone people to understand what their unique skills are and to hire them right on the button. And that gives you so much more hiring confidence and when you match that with the job description, then your chances of retaining that person are much, much greater.
Wow. I'm gonna have to take a look at that because I just thought of because we go through realtors a lot. I mean, it's just
Yes,
nothing. I'm not trying to say bad things, but some have better work ethic than others. And it's like, I
sure.
need to find those individuals because they're selling their
Absolutely.
properties.
Absolutely. There's some realtors that are way extroverted and are people, but terrible with detail, or maybe are terrible with their persistence and their sort of drive day after day after day
Yes.
after day. But you can definitely do that. Have your favorite realtor take a PI assessment, and then you'll kind of know the profile that works best for you and for your company in your culture. That's one of the most important things about PI is that it's not, there isn't just one kind of realtor that succeeds, but there's probably one that does best in your company and in your culture, and that's what PI can tell you.
Is the test itself or the platform, is it, I'm guessing it's like DISC, you have to pay per assessment, or is there some other route, or is it cost prohibitive for smaller businesses?
It it may be cost prohibitive for for some businesses. I'll leave. If you want, you can leave my email in the show notes, and if anybody wants to know more about it, I'm happy to explain it, or we could talk offline too. Yeah, for the average small business, it's probably cost prohibitive. It depends on how many employees you have and on how many people you need to interview and hire a year. Generally speaking, you need probably north of 50 a year for it to be cost effective.
Okay.
But this is a tool that I can provide for my clients in a way that is cost effective.
Interesting. I love that. I'll have to check it out, and we'll talk offline and
I'd
go
love
through
to.
that, 'cause that would be great. So a little bit more about what you're doing on the coaching side. I mean, what is your typical client profile, and where are they at in
Sure.
this whole sphere of entrepreneurship or small business owner?
Sure. Well, we've already, kind of described the experience both you and I have had, where you have a good idea, and by willpower and sweat and midnight oil, you get the business to a couple of $1 million, and you're pinching yourself, you're happy, but you sort of realize that on the other hand, you're a little bit trapped, and that what was just miraculous for you to be able to start a business is now feels like a little bit of a trudge. And so the clients that I typically work with, they are entrepreneurs. They have small to medium sized businesses, and they typically get stuck someplace in the $2 to $10 million range where the business is good, and they're grateful, but it's not as good as it could be, or maybe as they originally envisioned. And what they especially notice is that the role they're playing in it isn't as much fun as it was. That it's become, as one of my clients said the other day, it's become adult daycare. And if that resonates for you at all, then you're the sort of person that I work for, where it's pretty good, but it could be a lot better. And especially if you find that either sales or profits or market share are starting to plateau, where you're not, where the trajectory that used to be kind of straight up has leveled off. Um, so if you're in that kind of a spot, and especially if you're getting tired, or you've ever said, I feel kind of burned out, then yeah, that's the sort of person I want to talk to.
How are your clients, and you said it earlier, we're in a recession. I agree with you. There's so much going on there. How is that affecting your client base and future business? I mean, are more small business owners reaching out?
What I'm finding is that there are some businesses that are interest rate sensitive, um, and they definitely have some issues. Really, what I'm generally feeling or finding that the recession is kind of overblown. Really, I mean, most of my clients, their industries are okay. The biggest problem that they're having is that they are unable to find and to retain the people that they really need to propel their business through a plateau. That's the biggest single problem. And so, I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, where the unemployment is, I think, number two in the country at under 3%. It's like 2 point, I don't know, 4%. And you can't find anybody to do anything. And so that's the biggest problem I found with most of my clients is talent. And number one is finding the people, but number two, even worse, is keeping the people. Because if you have a revolving door of employees that don't work out, generally I found part of the problem is that you're not defining the role. Uh, in enough detail, but you're also not, the process of recruiting and interviewing is off. And so that's why you're not getting the, you're not just not getting the people, but you're not retaining the people. That seems to be the area that's hurting my clients the most right now, is that they just can't seem to get enough traction to grow to the next level. The other problem that I'm finding, I don't know if your clients are seeing this, or in the real estate business, you may see this. I've got clients that are developers and of multifamily and things like that. Their biggest problem is insurance.
Yes.
We've got clients in the Midwest who used to be insured for one big hailstorm a year, or maybe one every 2 years, but now they're having three major hailstorms a year, and the underwriter, the carriers are saying, pass. We're going to get out of the market. You see this in Florida and California, but you also see it nationwide. So if you're in a business that requires you to have insurance for natural disaster, that's becoming prohibitively expensive. I've got one multifamily client who, Allstate or State Farm, one of them came to him and said, "Okay, we'll give you a policy, but you have to have a $200,000 per incident deductible." And that's not insurance. That's self-insurance, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know what it is. But
Wow.
it's mostly workforce is much bigger problem than anything else right now. Um,
That
Go ahead.
that is no. That's just a lot. We're gonna get kind of sort of ripe in this. I got to learn to speak English again, guys. We're gonna wrap this up, but I just had one other question: is the workforce aspect in being able to get the traction on the front end, and then also keeping them on the back end. Any of that related to that C word we have going around, before COVID, the pandemic, or you just think that's just a hiring issue? Or both. I don't know.
Well, the what we know from the Gallup people is that an astonishingly high percentage of the American workforce says that they feel mostly or always burned out. It's like 77%.
Wow.
And so, one of the biggest things, and we just have to, and most people expected it to go down when COVID ended, if it has ended last year, but it didn't. It didn't go down. In fact, it went up. People are feeling more burned out now post COVID, if that's a thing, than they were before. So one of the things that we have to contend with, we don't necessarily have to agree with it or disagree with it, but one of the things we have to contend with as employers is we've got a workforce that's very sensitive to, especially the millennial workforce, which is most of the
Yes.
workforce, is very, very sensitive to, and rightly so in a lot of cases, to how they are treated, the experience they have, et cetera. And in a lot of cases, they're not willing, as my generation was, to trade time for money at any cost. And so one of the things that we really work with our clients is to give them management and leadership skills that work with the current workforce. And part of that is putting the right people in the right seats of the bus and being confident when you hire them to do that, but also to know what works. Our leadership development program, for example, is specifically designed toward managing the millennial workforce, and also training millennials to manage other millennials, because it's not the same at all as it used to be. And it's very important to get that right. There are nuances that are, I find that's maybe the biggest single challenge that our clients are having today.
Wow. We can unpack so much there. There's so much going on in this space, and there's so many things that entrepreneurs go through. The best way someone can reach out to you or channel if they want to work with you.
Go to Double Dare You, which is Double Dare YOU, doubledareyou.us, and information about everything we talked about is there. And if you'd like to talk about Predictive Index, about our CEO Freedom Program, or anything like that, you can schedule an appointment right there on the site.
Great. I will also link it in the show notes. I'll put that in there instead of your email address so they can reach out to you there.
Probably
And
best, yeah.
okay, perfect. Well, sir, thank you for coming on the show. It's been an honor, and also it's just been so great to have you share your information with the
My
listeners,
pleasure, Ryan. Thank you.
but also you've gone through the same thing some of us have also gone through, as the failure and so forth. And that humbles us, but it also is a lot of learning experience out of that. And I thank you for sharing that knowledge and experience with the listeners.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ryan.
All right. Thank you.